We are starting lectures on Mill, and this is part one. In it, we are going to discuss Mill's position that happiness or pleasure is good in itself. And that is based on Mill's theory of life. And from that, Mill will be able to tell us what good actions are. Mill gives us a theory of human being and morals that start from the idea that happiness is the only thing that is good in itself, and that everything else is therefore only good insofar as it produces happiness. Mill does not get to this point by thinking like Aristotle, who also thought that happiness was what human life is all about. Aristotle's fundamental intuition is that everything has a purpose. Mill does not talk about purposes. And Aristotle thinks that everything has a purpose, perhaps insofar as we cannot understand anything unless we think of its purpose, or perhaps Aristotle's point is simply about the nature of things being in motion and striving to maintain a certain course toward a certain goal. Like life, that seeks to sustain itself by growth, healing, and reproduction. Aristotle then notices that the final purpose of all that human beings do is happiness, insofar as we say that everything we do is for the sake of happiness, while happiness is for the sake of nothing other than itself. Purposiveness and for the sake of are key categories for Aristotelian understanding of reality. Mill is also thinking about life, much like Aristotle. But for Mill, the essence of life is that all living beings seek what is pleasant and avoid what is painful. But Mill does not think of these as goals that life pursues, not as purposes, but rather as reactions to stimuli and other causes. And so, pleasure feels good, so to speak, and pain feels bad. And that is really all there is. And what we really mean by happiness is pleasure. In that sense, anything is good, insofar as it results in pleasure. And good or moral actions are those that maximize pleasure and minimize pain. There's a fundamental insight on Mill's part that every action results in some pleasure or happiness or benefit and some pain or suffering or harm. No action just produces happiness or pleasure, but also produces some kind of harm or suffering with it. Even if an action does not seem to produce suffering, we have to be mindful of that we have skipped on whatever happiness would have followed from the alternative actions that we have foregone to perform the action that we did perform. Everything has its costs and its benefits. Economists call this opportunity cost. So, to sum it all up, the best or most good or moral action is the one that maximizes pleasure over pain. For example, if action A causes 5 units of pleasure and 2 units of pain, while action B causes 10 units of pleasure and 8 units of pain, everything else being the same or equal, a good or moral choice is to choose action A. The utility of action A is 3. 5 minus 2 equals 3. And it is higher than that of action B, which is 2, since 10 minus 8 equals 2. Hence, the name of the school that Mill represents, utilitarianism. For this school of thought, the moral action is one that maximizes utility, and moral thinking is just calculating utility and choosing the action that gives most utility from among those available. Of course, Mill is not only unlike Aristotle, for whom happiness is much more than pleasure, but is virtue, but Mill is also in opposition to Kant, for whom good or moral actions are ones that do good duty out of respect for laws, that respect rationality as a good in itself, completely independently of any pleasure or suffering produced. Mill is really the direct opposite of Kant. For Kant, pleasure, suffering, all of these have nothing to do with what is good in the highest sense, whereas Mill would like to say that good in the highest sense is nothing but pleasure that we have over suffering.